to be the Hyderabad launch of the book. Balu is, over the last 3 years that I've been here, Balu's become a dear friend and someone that I've grown to admire tremendously. So it's so while being proud of the fact that he's chosen us as the place for him to launch the book, I'm also I'm delighted. So on a personal note, I'm very delighted that he chose us here. So let me just say a few words. We are already a few minutes late. We thought we're starting at 11 o'clock. You've come here to listen to people who are going to speak a lot more and in depth about things that I know very little about. Okay, so you have a very distinguished panel of speakers who are going to talk with in-depth knowledge of a lot of things that are there, right, covered in the book. But a few words, right? The first time I want to say that what an accomplishment it is to write a book of this nature when doing one of the most important jobs in the country. Balu, I don't know how you find the time. I know because I get calls and sometimes in the middle of the evening. He always prefaces it, do you have a few minutes? Okay, so he always does that. He just doesn't call, but it can happen at 7 in the evening. It can happen at 6 in the morning. Do you have a few minutes to talk? So I know how hard he works, and I know the work that they're doing, and we are proud to be partners in the work that you're doing, Balu. And I think we were your first knowledge partner that the Capacity Building Commission signed.
You're also the first to actually give us knowledge.
Okay, thank you. That's kind of you. So to write a book in the midst of doing that work and doing it really well, I think is an amazing accomplishment, and that's something I just wanted to start off. You have a day job, you're doing it, and you're doing it really well, and then you're writing a book on the side. That's fantastic. This is an important book, and I'll say why it's an important book from my perspective, right? So I'll just lay down what I think it is. So this is a book that marries Indian philosophy with some Western models. It takes some Western models and then it tries to create synthesize some of the ideas from these two places. What for me I find very nice about the book is it doesn't just reject the Western lens, but engages with it. So there are some ideas. So, for example, you will see there is this Loria and Lawrence model, or this Richard Boyatz's model. So there are a lot of these different models of leadership that are out there that have been in existence for some period in time. So what Balu does do is engage with them seriously. So wherever there is a possibility of learning from them and adopting them, he does. But where he thinks that it can add to what the ideas that he's presenting in the book, that is the synthesis that he's attempting to do. So at a time like this, right, when we just dismiss views that are very different from us, we just say, okay, they're all wrong. Or even worse, right, we create straw men of those arguments and we think that, okay, we'll make a caricature of that argument and then make fun of it. So to have a book like this that engages with it and engages in the kind of depth that it does is refreshing. It's welcome, and it's a model for the way that we want to conduct ourselves, right? So that so it's not just in the way that a book is written, but it's also in the way that we conduct ourselves, being open-minded, accepting, engaging, and then taking what is good and not leaving the things that we don't agree with. We can leave that, but engagement is what is necessary, and I really appreciate that you've done that in the book. You've done a lot of that. So that's for me a very profoundly important contribution of the book, and I hope that people will take that. That is the spirit in which you wrote it. I hope that is the spirit in which people will take it. I also want to note the methodology, right? So the methodology is also super interesting, and something that I also hope students, scholars, others, readers of the book, they'll take away from this. So what Balu notes, right, at the beginning of the book, he notes is that he'd spent a lot of years studying Indian philosophy, Indian folklore, Indian scriptures, and he believed that there was a lot of knowledge there and wisdom there that could come to the aid of leaders and leadership scholars. Right? So there's a lot of that is going on there. But he was wondering about how do I bring that to the attention of people, right? So he was thinking about that. And he wanted to communicate in a manner that people will take it, will look at it, and will use these ideas that are out there. But as any good teacher, that when ultimately a good teacher is when you're exposed to a profound idea, right? So a good teacher is not someone who just thinks profound thoughts. is the person who can take these profound thoughts and then present it to people in a manner that people can actually consume, people can actually use. Balu is a great teacher, because you can see that in terms of where he gets invited to a lot of the great schools in the world. He goes there, he teaches in all those schools. So he was just looking for how do you communicate, and the way that he communicates is by the use of examples, by the use of cases, by the use of anecdotes, and so on. So he was looking for that, right? So he was thinking about it, he was looking for that. And I think it's really fortuitous that that the Capacity Building Commission came along, and that you found an occasion to work with a person who, when you looked at it and you said, okay, this is a person that I can use to exemplify all of those different learnings that I've had over a period of time. So it's great that it happened at that point in time, which then allowed you to observe closely, allowed you to work, interact, and say that, also test for yourself whether the initial thoughts that you had, that this is an exemplar of the kind of things that I want to do, whether it is actually true. And so I think this is a really, really wonderful fortune, that it happened, and then a book is a result of that. So I think about, so first is just the thought itself, the spirit in which it's written. The second is the methodology in which it is written. These make this one it makes it an important book, and the kind of book that I hope that different people going forward, they will attempt to write books like this. That's the kind of thing that's there. So I can't think, so when I look at it, and I can't think of a better way of illustrating the ideas, because these, again, as I said, you're going to listen to people who have much, much more depth about these ideas than I have. I just have a very superficial understanding of it, not even a understanding, but some superficial read of it, but you're going to learn from them. But Balu, thank you for putting it in a manner that's something that we can all think of and read from. Balu's other, it's less explicit, but in my conversations with him, because we've talked about these over a period of time, a less explicit goal, but it is there, right throughout the book, it is there, is that he's hoping that with examples that he's used and choosing a leader who's so much admired, he's hoping that this book will be a call for arms and will inspire people towards public service and public leadership. So there's multiple goals that are out there, and there are multiple things that different audiences can take away from it, and that's always the hallmark of a good book. So I'll stop with that and welcome you again. And Balu, thank you again for choosing us as the place for us to launch this book. Thank you.
Okay, because I wanted to buy it. Professor Madan, and it's an honor and a privilege for two reasons for me to be in Hyderabad to launch this book. One is ISB as an institution is something was so distant for me in a sense. And then once I started to know people, I understood how humanized this institution was. So that's my first way of putting it. And the second was how deeply committed. We always imagine business schools are only for the corporate world. And somehow it forms a stereotype in your mind. And then you don't even want to understand anything else that negates it. Once I started interacting with Madan and other professors, Deepa and others, their commitment and conviction that they got to partner with government to make this country a better place. And the best part was, I could just pick up the phone and say, I have no money to give you. I only got a problem to state and you help me with the solution. And unfailingly, the last 3 years, it's been a great journey. We've had a lot of work we have done together, and I'm proud that a lot of learning in terms of real knowledge is getting transferred to several millions of offices across the government. So thank you again for partnering. The second reason for me, Hyderabad is a very dear place. Is the research happened. I would possibly say Hyderabad, but these people today in the world of internet, young people sit all over the country. So Anshuman, Akshay. Anshuman has been my lead researcher. And I really want to thank him for it. Within the Brihat team, everybody in Brihat has had great contribution. Raghav is a friend. I don't even see him as a researcher. So, and Kavita ji with her own demands of the purest nature she is, and it has to be purist. And no compromises on that. And Simran, who did the wonderful sketches. And so the way, everything was an idea which, the author gets the credit because that's what the names are there for. But there's so many people behind you to actually make a book out of it. Writing it was difficult, like Madan said, and a full-time job with the Prime Minister who seems to not sleep at all. It's not easy because there's no weekend, there's nothing like that, and it's fun. Working in Delhi has been a great learning experience for me because I recognize friends like Amit are here, and the extraordinary leadership in the civil services, in the government ecosystem, which is hardly recognized but always complained about, is something which I went in with that stereotype, and the last 3 years has helped me change how the government has actually changed me. How much of I can change the government is left for the next few years to judge. So it's made me, in a positive way I meant, it's made me recognize the extraordinary circumstances, the kind of resource constraints under which leadership gets expressed in the public space within the country. More importantly for me, this book is a personal journey. I used to, obviously the research was a lot, but I used to get up at 3 in the morning and write. Because I was very conscious about the ethical demands I make on myself. For 9 o'clock would be office time and that's it. And rest of the time was whatever I did. And therefore I had to call you at 7 in the evening or 6 in the morning. And I have trouble Anshuman all odd times because I teach at Cornell and where I did most of the writing. And so it didn't even bother me that I'm in US time and he's in India time. I would just say I want this sorted out now because I'm writing now and I need it. And he'd always respond. He's never said no to me. And so I really want to thank you, Anshuman. Manuscript is easy to put out, but then making it a book and making it a published book is the next big challenge. All my earlier books, this is my 9th book, all my earlier books were either published by Cornell University Press or by Graham here, so it was a different thing. A place which knows you, and so for them it's just, they just want a book, and so I give it, and they have their own standards, but it's easier. But going to a professional publisher who's also interested in markets and who also want to say whether the book has got a space for the book in the market, and then should they be writing about it. And in a polarized world, when you take calls based on optics rather than on content, the challenges were there. But to be fair, the only publisher I spoke to first, the first publisher we spoke to was Penguin. And they were very professional. And they said, we'll read the book. We will definitely come back to you on this. And within 3-4 days, they reached out and said, we have to publish this book. And the reason they explained this is so beautiful. The vice president publishing called me and said, she said, we were concerned it could be in hagiography, and we were not keen on publishing it if it's a hagiography. So we wanted to read it. That's the only reason we want to read it. Now that we have read it, we are concerned that it will go to somebody else, so we want to publish it. So we are going to publish it. And so they've been an extremely great supporter, because today's world, you need a legal team to check whether I'll get sued and somebody will get defamed. And so they have their own teams, the copy editing team, the legal teams, all the kinds of teams they have, the creative teams. So I must thank them for being part of this journey. But finally, without a protagonist to write about, I needed a flesh and blood example, something which will make us feel we can relate to him. And writing about a person with a 78% approval rating, writing about a person you report to is dangerous. Because you can get carried away by the charisma that you're exposed to and become subjective. And I value my intellectual integrity, and so I had to walk the thin edge of saying, am I really, and extremely mindful. I rewritten the book 32 times. I kept track actually. Because I want to make sure that anything I put out there, I'll stand by it. So I can speak with conviction that whatever I've written there is based on what I discovered, either in observational analysis of mine, experiential anecdote that I went through, or through direct conversations with the Honorable PM himself, and through people who report to him. And it's a journey of 50 years. Studying a person for 50 years, you can't do it in one book. So my colleagues at Cornell had a nice way of putting it. They said each chapter is several PhDs. So unless students take it and actually work on it and build the body of knowledge, it was a difficult attempt to put it into one book. And I had promised myself that I won't exceed 250 pages. It's on 251 pages, the actual book. And the rest of it is my research notes. Obviously, I didn't put all my research notes because that will be bigger than the book. I just try to keep it as what is relevant to this. There's a glossary of terms which two wonderful people, Kavita and Professor Anuradha Chaudhary from IIT Kharagpur, worked on. If I thought Kavita was a purist, Anuradha Chaudhary was purist quiet on me. And she said, nothing doing. He was still unhappy because he says, I shouldn't have used diacritics. I should have written the actual Sanskrit. And I told her, this is a global book. No, and we want acceptance. As much as we want to accept what comes from the Western world, we also have to get acceptance of whatever our thoughts are. And I have tried, and MadanM was so beautiful and eloquently described everything I've tried, and it's perfect. You hit the nail on the head. I'm not trying to deride anything, and I'm neither trying to romanticize Indian stuff. I think we all walk a fine line. There's a lot of trash in our past which we have to throw away, but there's a lot of greatness which we got to remember. The baby and the bathwater can't be thrown out together. So we have to capture which is relevant today. And we're an excellent recording of a podcast, and Deepa, as always, was tough and demanding. And she was very challenging, and I think I've answered all that there, so you can listen to the podcast later. But it's a struggle to say what is relevant and what can be used in today's context, because it's nice to glorify our past, but if it's not going to be useful to build a future, what's the point in trying to understand it? So I've tried to only use those theories which I think has relevance today. The advantage of being trained in the West, in institutions like Harvard for me, is they offer a lot. And at least, and again, MadanM said it so beautifully, when the professors actually challenge you with ideas, and classrooms where you can actually challenge the professors those days. Nowadays, it's become very different. American campuses are different, to a point where I decided I'll not be teaching from this year onwards, there at least. So it's a different situation. So I have tried to make it relevant, I've tried to make it intelligent, and it's practical. And I should say, the real proof of the pudding for me was when extraordinary people whom I know, and who I know people who actually read the manuscript, because none of them would say, I'll write it. When I approached Nitin, a good friend, he said, you know me, Balu, it's not friendship that's going to help me decide, it's just going to be your manuscript. And until I read that, I won't even tell you I'll write the foreword. And he actually read it, and you can read his foreword. It's a very nicely written one. And every single person who's endorsed the book, from Bill Gates to Anand Mahindra to N. Chandra to even a tribal woman who literally grew up. I delivered her actually, her mother rather, as a baby in the forest, and then she went to my school, and she's today an entrepreneur on her own. And so she also has written an endorsement. So for me, it's a wide variety of people who could resonate with these leadership principles. So it's a book for academic work, which can be taken deeper. I would like to be challenged. I know there are different views. Our scriptures themselves are very interpretational, and so somebody will say my interpretations are wrong, and that's fair. And I'm very open about it. It's my interpretation, and so whatever I could understand, I've written. If there's a better understanding, I'm willing to relook at it. And it's also a fact that it's easy to get lost in this noise of today. So I would request you to judge the book by what is inside. Read it, and don't get carried away by the noise outside. It's very difficult to insulate ourselves today. I've tried my best to insulate myself, keep objectivity, keep intellectual integrity, and give myself the space of interpretation. I've also said that, considered that. And I'm not a Sanskrit scholar, so I have to depend on translations, and I'm very open about it. And so I've tried to be as honest as I can. But this is for the global audience. The hope, and when I requested the Prime Minister permission to write this book and to use him as an exemplar, because I had to do that, he only put one condition. He said, make sure that this book is not about me, but by reading it, 1,000 leaders for this country will emerge. And I really hope that this book will allow that resurgence of leadership in this country, which this country richly deserves and today demands. Because we need to not only make India a better place, we need to make India's exemplar situations a model, a true Vishwa Guru for the rest of the world. And that's the message I hope to leave behind. And therefore the last chapter, the titling was a challenge, and I was constantly struggling with the epilogue, and I really have to thank Raghav for it, for the catchy title. He said this title is the best title to give. Like I said, it's a collaborative work. Different pieces of the puzzle were put in. I had an excellent, my grad student, I can't call her a student now, she graduated 10 years ago. She simply decided she's going to be the editor. And she said, nothing doing, I'm good. She had come and worked with me, stayed with me for a year, and she said, your book, I'm only editing. No choice in the matter. And her word of appreciation was simply one line. She said, just editing the book changed my life. And reading it, I'm I'm sure will change many more. And that's my hope and dream. And hopefully each of you will discover that potential inside each of you. And be as open and be as critical as you want, but please don't keep it as a book. To conclude, I narrate what Suhail Seth, the great management marketing guru, after reading the book, called me and said, Balu, please stop calling it a book. This is the best do-it-yourself kit I've had, and every young Indian should read it. I don't know how you will do it. If you want any help in branding as that, tell me, he said. And so it's been so many friends around. Each launch has been just friends, whether it's ISB in Pillutla or friends in Bangalore or in Delhi and every other place that this book is getting out there. That itself shows the love and affection people possibly have for me, which is the greatest asset I think I have built over time. So thank you all for it again, and thank you, MadanM, for having me. I would call it a unique book because it's the first book which looks at Indic appreciation of leadership from an Indic lens, and from I bring in scriptures, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Jataka tales, Panchatantra, Subhashitas, and analyzes Prime Minister Modi's leadership. It is not about something in the past, it's about using knowledge of civilizational wisdom to analyze a current sitting Prime Minister and see what drives his leadership performance. I also offer it as a solution for the world. How today's world is full of wicked problems, post-COVID we're all seeing it, how this knowledge can help make this world a better place. It's also unique in the fact that it's a global book, it's a prescription for global leadership. It combines the best of leadership knowledge from the West with the best that Indian civilizational wisdom offers, and putting it together as the way forward for all of us.
Okay.